November 2002, Nintendo and Retro Studios go ahead and release Metroid Prime for the GameCube, and it would go on to become not only one of the best games Nintendo's ever published, but one of the best games of all time. It is still so damn good. 22 years later, December of 2025, Nintendo and Retro Studios release Metroid Prime 4 Beyond for the Nintendo Switch and the Switch 2. Oh god, I'm so upset. The release, the subsequent playthrough, and the subsequent deep philosophical wondering if I ever liked Metroid in the first place have certainly filled me with more thoughts than any other game in the Nintendo Switch 2's first year, that's for sure. Yeah, I may have raved about Kirby Air Riders for nearly an hour, obviously a whole lot to say there, and I could probably say more, but Prime 4, man, this just kinda makes me sad. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you haven't watched my dated and likely very terrible videos of Metroid Prime 1 and 2 I did way too many years ago. So for those of you who are just catching up, hot take, I think the Metroid Prime trilogy is really good. Now, I was very late to the Metroid party. My young brain just couldn't process the more open-ended nature of how a Metroid game even worked. It wasn't until I got my Nintendo DS back in the day with Metroid Prime Hunter's First Hunt, when that cartridge was forced into your possession with the original fat model of the DS, that I went, oh okay, I totally understand Metroid now. And it's really not indicative of Metroid in the slightest. But between that and the general hype of the early Wii days, thanks to the videos on the Metroid Prime 3 preview channel, that I picked up my very first Metroid games with Hunters on DS and Prime 3 Corruption on the Wii. And I had a great time. I would then go on to play every other game in the series. Games like Zero Mission and Prime 1 would become some of my favorite and most replayed games of all time, and Metroid as a whole would become one of my favorite franchises of all time. Despite the little hiccup here or there. The Nintendo Land Metroid game was pretty sick though. But now in the mid-2020s, the Metroid Prime sub-series is 6 games deep. And I can only personally say like half of the games are really good, so it's really hard to tell where to go from here. But now to address the clickbait elephant in the room, the so-called fall of Metroid Prime. It's a Nintendo franchise, so realistically there will always be a potential future, but unlike more games that have recent entries like Donkey Kong, Pikmin, Fire Emblem, hell, even 2D Metroid, all those franchises I feel like have a very bright future ahead of them. When it comes to 3D Metroid, I just do not share that same optimism. So we're going to be spending some time today talking about the old and some time today talking about the new, because at the end of the day, doesn't matter what's going on in the current, in the now, it's always worth looking back at where we came from and celebrating what we had in the past, because there's still so much good stuff there. So when I was approached to be sponsored by the Disney Afternoon Collection, now available on Switch and Switch 2, of course I hopped on that immediately, are you kidding me? Oh, it's ad read time. That's right, everybody, the Disney Afternoon Collection is now available on Switch and Switch 2, and I, for one, am very excited about this. Having grown up with some of these classics like DuckTales and Darkwing Duck, it is so cool having this compilation finally available on Nintendo consoles. You got DuckTales, DuckTales 2, Chip 'n Dale, Chip 'n Dale 2, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, and now, for their very first ever re-releases, Goof Troop and Bonkers. That's 8 games right there. Do you want quality of life editions like a rewind button, save states, and configurable button layouts? You got it. Do you want some time attack and boss rush modes with online leaderboards? You got that too. Take a trip over to the gallery to check out some sketches that would become the endgame pixel art. You can take a look at a bunch of box arts, magazine ads, and a whole lot more. And of course, a music player to just, play the Moon theme on loop for 30 minutes at a time. As a lifelong fan of these games, I am so happy a new audience can experience these classics. Check out the Disney Afternoon Collection, available digitally and physically with the link down below. And also, check out my video I just uploaded on AntDude Plus to hear me rave about these games even more. Thank you so much for sponsoring today's video, and now, back to more Nintendo games. I don't think that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a bad game, like, objectively. I would say it's a pretty good first-person adventure on an alien planet. It looks gorgeous and, certainly plays like Metroid Prime to me, but it's just so hard to not compare it to what made these games great in the first place, the other Prime games, and really, Metroid games in general. Plus, with the 8 years of hype after a single teaser trailer that had everybody screaming from the rooftops that, oh my god, Metroid is back, you just can't help but build all these expectations, and when all is said and done and the credits roll, I couldn't help but be f***ing pissed. Maybe part of that's on me, leading up to its release, I played through every single Prime game to prepare for this monumental release. So, to prove to myself that I wasn't wasting my time, let's take Prime 4 Beyond and compare it to some of the defining characteristics of the previous entries and see what they got right and what they got wrong. Forgive me, it's about to get real nerdy in here. There are so many things that the original Metroid Prime got right. One of those things was the whole idea of storytelling being show, not tell, with its phenomenal immersive atmosphere. There are so many stories that have taken place on Talon 4 throughout all of its different regions. The Chozo ruins are filled with temples and statues and prayer that, combined with all of the lore that you can scan from a lot of these structures, add to the idea that this once was a lived-in place that is now swarming with a bunch of gross bugs. Phendrana Drifts has research facilities frozen in time. The Phazon mines are filled with tunnels that were mined out to mine out Phazon, one of the core components of the original Metroid Prime trilogy, even housing quarantine zones for actual Metroids. The species that is a Metroid, it takes a while for them to show up in the game titled Metroid, and that makes their appearance in this game so much more impactful. It's very clear through all of the different corners of this planet that Talon 4 is telling a story of being invaded by space pirates stretching out as far as possible. In your travels, you'll even find some unfortunate souls that have already lost their lives underwater while the rest of the group just went on. It's damn near a jump scare, but when you open up the one door and then a dead space pirate just plops into the water in front of you, on paper, it's a cheap jump scare. But in terms of the storytelling and world building, it was such a cool touch. Now yes, a big component of Metroid Prime is scanning as many things as you can, and that's how you get a huge bulk of the lore, but it's not that difficult to absorb your surroundings and then build a story that's not too far off from what actually happened. I'm mostly highlighting Metroid Prime 1 in this argument because, in my opinion, it's a damn near 10 out of 10 perfect video game, and why not talk about its lore, but Prime 2 Echoes and Prime 3 Corruption are no slouches either, just not as impactful in my opinion. I always had a strong love for the Sanctuary Fortress in Prime 2, this very clearly technologically advanced area of Aether that the Luminoth were hiding all of their creations in an attempt to keep all of their creations safe from all of the brand new dark shadowy creatures that were suddenly popping up and destroying everything. And then in Prime 3, most of the lore is hidden behind the text logs, and you do get a greater appreciation of some of these environments when you learn why the Galactic Federation decided to put the Aurora units on those specific areas. And I get it, Prime 3 is still a little more controversial in the grand scheme of the Metroid Prime series, but man, the Pirate Homeworld, what a damn cool spot this is, such a good standout. You spend 3 games having to deal with these space pirates, and now in the 3rd game, that's all about traveling through different planets instead of sticking to one secluded one, and you get to go to the homeworld where those annoying pieces of garbage that were bothering your run-throughs of the first game, you get to go to where they live and where they have their base. Oh, that's so sick. Prime 1 is damn near perfection, and while Prime 2 and 3 do fall a little bit short of that perfection in my eyes, at least in terms of variety, these areas are still incredibly beautiful to look at. You may not be able to piece together a good story without doing a lot of the scan logs, but hey, from a visual perspective, you can look at an area like Skytown Elysia and not go, damn, the fact that something happened here is crazy. This place is gorgeous. And then, Metroid Prime 4. We just go back to the very basic elemental-themed locations. Fury Green, the grass area. Flare Pool, the volcano area. Ice Belt, the ice area. You got another mine shaft, not too dissimilar to what we got in Prime 1's mines. I will give Volt Forge credit because it is a relatively interesting idea, this dark, creepy structure, and yeah, there's electricity happening all around this facility and it's powering up all the machines inside. Thematically, it's definitely Prime 4's most unique setting. The lack of originality in these areas don't make them bad, but it's certainly lacking a lot of creativity. And once again, that's simply in the visuals. There are barely any set pieces within these environments that have any spectacle. You think maybe, okay, what about enemy variety? You can piece together a little bit of lore by discovering brand new creatures in each environment that have to grow and adapt to all of the ups and downs each one of these elements bring to the table. But no, there's a lack of enemy variety there too. These f***ing security droids, man, there are so many of them in every single area. I got sick of them. The Chozo ghosts in Prime 1, they're certainly annoying, but you know, at least they're kind of interesting from a story perspective. These stupid robots, there is some lore with Sylex and how they're always just there when you don't want them to be, but in general, you're lacking enemy variety, you're lacking visual variety, and the most interesting thematic location, the Vault Forge, honestly, it's just kind of annoying to explore in my opinion. And then don't get me started on Soul Valley, I'll get to that in a second. I will say though, the bosses are great. They are the best part of the game as far as I'm concerned. These giant, unique globs of mass, just with a bunch of weak points all over the place, and you gotta figure out how to dodge them in the right way, and you gotta use your psychic beam for some of them, and they're pretty damn difficult too. Like, they're actually imposing creatures. The bosses are really cool. Like the Omega Griever, this has such a creepy and icky design, and you gotta figure out clever ways to use the bombs and break all of its appendages so you can reveal its weak spot. Like, it's a cool and pretty intense fight. But okay, you're not really gonna get a whole lot of lore by not scanning in this game, so you want to take advantage of the scan visor, of course. The visor system is one of Metroid Prime's key defining features. and scanning in this game is kind of annoying. Because I know there is some kind of reward for scanning 100% of all the possible items there is, I want to scan as many things as possible. I always have a fear of not scanning enough, but this game is loaded with so many scan points that reveal nothing of interest. There are individual computers that tell you nothing, and while I feel like in the previous games you take a look at one computer and go, okay, that was a meaningless computer, all of the other meaningless computers you can just avoid. Here, I don't know, maybe one of them will have a thing. The game doesn't do a strong enough job pointing it to scan the things that are actually important and count towards 100%. Considering every single new scan still takes a few seconds for your visor to calculate what's going on, there's so much time wasted scanning items that ultimately give you no good information. And it also doesn't help that the brand new species that you're trying to assist in this game, the Lemorn, their lore is not that interesting. They used to live on this planet, it rained green, and now they're bad, and those are some of the enemies you've been fighting. Oh, okay. And then you find out that some of this damage was self-inflicted by this race, so am I supposed to care about them now because they caught themselves in a weird situation? I don't care. I don't know who they are. It's such an obvious criticism to make, but there is so much missed potential with these creatures. For one, they look kind of cool. Having an axolotl-themed alien race is just pretty neat looking. Coming off of the bug creatures, the Luminoth from Prime 2, why not? Change things up a little bit. We got a water creature now, awesome. And without going into really deep spoiler territory, they get so close to making this alien race feel kinda cool and make you really question if you should be working for them or not. It just falls flat at the end of the day. So Prime 4 ultimately throws you onto a brand new planet and environments that are not all that interesting, that used to be inhabited by an alien race that has nothing of interest worth to offer. Awesome. At least gameplay-wise, once the game does get going, I do think the primary areas are fun. There are some progression issues for sure, and we'll get to that, but mechanically speaking, it's still a pretty solid game. It just takes a while to get to those good parts, and then it kind of falls flat by the end. And you don't need a good story for a Metroid game to succeed, but if you're gonna show effort with these big old cutscenes and the very clear production value that goes into them, you should have crafted a more engaging plot, especially when psychic powers are a brand new thing here. Like, story-wise, really brings nothing to the table. But okay, let me talk about Soul Valley for a little bit now. When I try to think about backtracking in a Metroid Prime game that usually always pisses me off, my mind gravitates towards Metroid Prime 2 because it's one of the most notorious elements of that game, the Dark World. It can be pretty monotonous at times, and it made exploration relatively bloated. Oftentimes you would just find yourself traversing back to a portal to the Dark World and finding where you need to go in the Dark World, and just hoping that the pathway to get there is open. You'll be in the Light World, it'll tell you, hey, go to the Dark World, a variant of this one very spot, and you think, oh, that must be easy. Nope, gotta take a few minutes, just find a portal, and then, oh, now there's enemies now, and then I gotta get blocked off, and it's a little annoying. At the end of the day, not a huge deterrent because it's still a really damn good game, but backtracking I feel like is definitely the weakest in Prime 2 compared to 1 and especially 3, which was definitely more linear. And ultimately, the whole idea of backtracking is baked into the Metroid formula. Right from the very offset of this franchise, you would run, see things you can't access yet, and then you get an item later on and you go, oh, okay, that makes sense, now I'll go back and get that thing. A lot of times, it's an optional item. Sometimes, that's progression, and it rewards you for simply remembering where you've already traversed, and in more modern games, rewarding you for just looking at the map and going, oh yeah, that's the spot. But I bring up Metroid Prime 2 specifically because in my mind, I didn't think the new game could do things worse than Prime 2 did. Dude, I hate Soul Valley so much. I heard initial comparisons to Hyrule Field from Ocarina of Time, and not in a good way. In the way that it's a giant, bland area with nothing going on, but if you look at the corners of the map, hey, that's a spot that looks like you can go to. But damn it, at least Ocarina of Time had fast travel between those points. In this game, no. Introducing Viola, the bike. Oh boy. Another Bayonetta 3 mention, but kudos to Nintendo for having 2 Switch games where a character named Viola comes in, and that game turns out to be incredibly divisive. Kudos, Nintendo, what a record you're going for. I was one of the psychopaths that when I first saw the motorcycle in a Nintendo Direct, I was kind of excited for it. What an interesting way to move the series forward. In my mind, I went, okay, before you unlock the ability to fast travel, why not introduce faster travel? And like I said earlier, traveling through Voltforge is incredibly slow and boring, but eventually you do get Viola, and then you get like this training sequence that's pretty bizarre. It looks like a VR thing, where you're racing around a circular track and learning how to do combat while on the bike, and it's a little bit of a jumping the shark moment for Metroid, but you know what? If the game is gonna do more with this motorcycle, I will be down for it. Why not spice things up? Oh, none of those things happened. It was all bad. Soul Valley just lacks everything. There's no wonderful exploration, there's no sense of discovery, no random secrets. You just have a few shrines, and the game dares to call them shrines, which is crazy, that give you beam power-ups. Woo, that's it. And there's no music, by the way. You gotta scan the Samus amiibo, and that's the only way you will unlock music while you're traveling. The Viola amiibo will unlock skins for your bike. Ooh. These are some of the worst examples of amiibo unlocking functionality I've seen yet, and we still have Sylex to talk about. It's not completely barren. There are some structures that you'll find occasionally. They're just big metal structures with a very bare bones amount of platforming and one item like a missile tank or a health upgrade, and that's it. And then you have no real time to simply enjoy and try to be amazed at what you're viewing, because if you stand still for like 5 seconds, these stupid sand creatures will come up and ruin your day, and they're obnoxious to deal with, so okay, I guess I won't stand still. And if it's not the enemies that are bothering you, it's stupid Miles McKenzie that's telling you you're playing the game wrong. Oh, I'll talk about him later too. There's a whole section about him. But not to completely diminish everything Soul Valley has to offer, there is one kind of cool boss fight. Kudos to you, man. I knew something was gonna be off with Soul Valley because it already took so long to get access to this stupid bike because of Voltforge that just as my mind was going, cool, here's the open world, right? It's supposed to be I can kind of do these things in any order I want. And then Miles goes, wow, ain't this place really cool, and look how big and vast it is. You can really tackle these areas in any order that you want. Only for that to be a lie. You can visit the other locations for like 2 seconds before you're blocked off, and then you figure out there's only one direct location you can go, so it's linear. It's a linear Metroid game. Why even do this open world thing at all? Like, I guess it kind of makes sense that if you're gonna get an ice ability, then you can't explore the entirety of the lava area because that's just how your video game brain is accustomed to working. But then why were the locations that generic anyway? If you did something unique with them, then maybe you could have actually tackled them in unique ways. But sorry, I was misremembering, I was offering you some misinformation, let me pull back a little bit. You go to the lava area, you see the lava fall, and you go, okay, whatever, I'll come back once I do the ice area and get the ice beam. We should be good. No, because, and there's nothing in the game indicating this is what you should do, you have to go back to Voltforge, and then you get an upgrade to your suit that allows you and your bike to travel onto the lava. The game does not direct you about this. Oh god, and even the process of getting the ice beam, what, you wanted to just get the beam and then you're good? No, you get a chip that you then have to go back to Miles McKenzie, and then he installs the chip into your arm cannon. Cool. There's no fast travel in this game. Every time you want to do anything, you have to go on your bike and drive through the barren wasteland to get to your destination. And there is a reason for this, because they want you to get dozens upon hundreds of these stupid crystals, and hey, you can't get those crystals if you're fast traveling. Why not drive through it and take a different path to get where you need to go now? No! Honestly, the only reason why I didn't absolutely hate the green crystal thing was because it was giving me major Ratchet and Clank 2 vibes. I mean, it's just the same damn thing at this point. So we got equivalents of the same basic elemental beams that we've gotten in the past, but now there are just extra steps to get access to them. And this is all Miles McKenzie's fault! Little fun Metroid fact here. Did you know that Metroid Prime 3 and the Metroid Prime trilogy is just slightly different than the base Metroid Prime 3 on the Wii?
Damn! They're targeting the planetary defense system. No! They're targeting the planetary defense system.
Okay, so Metroid Prime 2 introduced a little bit more story than you're used to in Metroid games up until this point. As a player, you get to watch some cutscenes that show the Galactic Federation going about one of their operations. These cutscenes were very few and far between, and they were mostly at the start of the game, so they didn't really mess with the typical Metroid flow. And it was fine. It really fit with the dark and desolate vibes of Metroid Prime 2 perfectly. I really don't have issues there. Plus, you get to see the Galactic Federation. Oh boy, am I excited to see more of them. And then Metroid Prime 3 came along and introduced even more story. It made NPCs a core focus of the adventure, and this is totally against Metroid tradition. You get to deal with a whole troop of Galactic Federation soldiers now, as well as other warriors that eventually get corrupted by Dark Samus that you then battle with in these really cool encounters because they all have unique pros and cons to how they fight. There's no emotional ties to these characters, it's just kind of an excuse to give the player some really cool boss fights while making Dark Samus feel all the more powerful before their final encounter to wrap this trilogy up. Plus, Rundus got a really cool theme song for his battle, and like, not the greatest boss fight in the world, but Damn it, his theme song was sick. And some other Metroid games have dabbled with NPCs in the past, you know, namely Metroid Other M and Metroid Prime Federation Force. As we all know, two of the biggest fan favorites of this franchise. So in Prime 4, we decided to go even further beyond that idea by finally giving you Federation members to work with throughout the entire game. Oh boy. Here's the thing, before the release, previews of Prime 4 were indicating some worry that, oh, this 30-minute segment I played of Miles McKenzie is really gonna make me worry for the entirety of this game. And honestly, all the complaining I've been doing for Miles, and I do think it's justified, that opening area, it's not that bad. He's just a stupid dork, and every time he says something dumb, Samus just deadpans him and he moves along his business, and his suit looks kinda cool. His face is dumb. Oh, his face is really dumb. But when he's wearing his suit and he's just a little science guy, it's fine. He doesn't really interfere with things. It's later on when he becomes the Navi of the game. Like, the Navi that everyone pretends Navi in Ocarina of Time is. That's kind of what Miles is in this game. I don't mind the other Federation members either. Gameplay-wise, it is pretty formulaic. You walk into a new area, you eventually find a member, you escort them back to Fury Green, etc., until the game tries to pull your heartstrings at the very end, but okay, I'll save that for the next section. But I do not hate these other Federation troops. I actually love the idea of working with the Federation during an active mission. It's something that even on paper, Other M got right. No one here really sticks out as this incredibly memorable character that I hope gets representation in a Smash Brothers game one day, but ultimately, I don't really care about their existence. It's them occupying the damn intercom that pisses me off. Maybe it was an attempt to make the game feel more modern, but why couldn't the game just do the classic Metroid thing of putting a marker on the map and you tell me where to go there and then just let me be, I'll figure it out. But instead now, if I take too long trying to see if I'm missing anything, little Jimothy over here has to barge in, remind me I have places to be. What are you doing? You having fun? F you. Their inclusion would have been so much more palatable if their interactions were limited, if you only saw a little bit of them, as you, Samus Aran, the most highly trained member of this entire crew, was left to do her own thing. But no, you gotta be reminded every so often that they exist and you're working for a greater good, and it's just annoying. And actually, a better idea, let's say they're always going to be popping their heads in to bother you. Why not? They're a constant part of the game. It would be so much better if the world felt properly lived in. But that whole lack of enemy variety and lack of interesting lore that the Lemorn bring to the table just makes everything so damn uninteresting. Dude, I just want to get all the crystals. Like, I already know by the end of the game I have to get a whole bunch of crystals and deposit them over at Fury Green, but every time I move and try to find new crystals I haven't gotten yet, Miles has to remind me that I got something else to do. I didn't see any menu option to turn this off. Can we just shut the hell up? Typically, Metroid games are also all about replayability. You did your first casual run of the game to know what everything is all about. Now you can potentially plan a second game where you can do things a whole lot faster. Not even just in a speedrun sense, just try to optimize your run as best as you possibly can. Or try out the harder difficulty, where you get to play the same game again, but you die easier. Why not? Replayability is the name of the game. And also, I am no stranger to a flawed game being fun in subsequent playthroughs because you already know what dumb stuff to ignore, so you can cut your frustrations down to a minimum and just go, that's what the game is, but if you do this, no big deal. I'm a Sonic fan, I've been here before. I already know that I can't immediately go back to Flare Pool after getting the Ice Beam, so no worries there, that frustration is gone in future playthroughs. But that being said, I also don't know if I'll ever replay this game again. There are just too many annoyances that make the moment-to-moment gameplay, outside of the couple hours you spent in the dedicated areas doing the typical Metroid thing, just frustrating. And like I said earlier, on like an objective level, it's still a really well-polished game. And make no bones about it, I am well aware a lot of my complaints come from simply comparing this to the earlier games rather than looking at this in its own bubble. It is really hard to not bring these topics into the conversation. If these things didn't bother you and you had a great time with every little element of this game and you like it more than the critics say, more power to you. But I think one thing that we can all agree on, oh my god, this story is ass. Yeah, we'll talk about Metroid Prime Hunters for a second, why not? Someone's got to. The DS entry of the Metroid Prime series introduced a brand new bunch of rival hunters, one of which is Sylex. And if you are not around for when this game was brand new, you really missed out on the fact that Sylex was nothing special, honestly. Like, he was just another one of the guys. That was it, man. I really don't know why they specifically chose Sylex to be the one of the entire bunch to have a special mention in later games, with Marvel level teasing at the end of Prime 3 and Federation Force. Never made sense to me. If anything, Trace was the most interesting one, because Metroid Prime Hunters had online Wi-Fi and he was the dominant sniper during online play. He was my boy. But okay, whatever, they're very clearly setting up Sylex for something bigger. Let's wait and see what they do to see if it was all worth the effort, and no, it's not. Oh my god, Sylex sucks. Normally you would expect a spoiler section for big story details, and if you want to skip the next couple minutes, by all means you can do that, but there's really not much here, and I got some complaining to do. Very start of the game, pretty strong. Sylex is here, and he's got some mock droids. That's crazy. He's using these special Metroids now to command an army of space pirates, as well as to fuse with other creatures that would then become the bosses. A detail that never really clicked for me. Like, if you scan the bosses, it tells you that, oh, they fuse with the Metroids, but I think my fan service brain saw the words Metroid Fusion and just popped off. Like, I was like, oh, Metroid Fusion reference, and then didn't register to me that it was actually about fusing the Metroid. So okay, Sylex is responsible for the bosses. Cool, that makes sense. I just really like Metroid Fusion. You do run into Sylex a few times during the adventure, only to find out that they were robots that were cloning him. Oh, okay, sure. So it turns out that Sylex has actually had some psychic powers of his own that's allowing him to have grand control over just a bunch of different beings in this world, and it's such a poorly explained little story detail. Like, I guess it's on me, I didn't read deeper into the lore logs for the bosses, and I didn't put two and two together that when I saw the Metroids with Sylex at the beginning, and then the Metroids going into the bosses, clearly Sylex has something to do with that. That's on me, and it does go against the whole show not tell idea of the story beforehand, but I don't know, I spoke with a bunch of friends who missed those details too. Had to do a whole reading of lore afterwards online to get a whole idea of what I missed out on, and then it kinda made sense. But in a game that already has so many character interactions, it could have used more cutscenes, I'm not gonna lie. But of course, and this is no big surprise, Sylex is the grand final boss here. That's to be expected. They put so much hype behind this one guy, he better be the final boss at this point. If it's just like a bait and switch to get Ridley back in here, that'd be confusing as hell. But no, it's Sylex. And, you know, you would think, okay, so we got the tease in Prime 3, we got the tease in Federation Force, he had some interaction with Samus and Hunters. What's his motivation here? Why is he so hell-bent on destroying Samus's life? It's because Sylex is mad at Samus from one previous encounter where she outshined him. That's it. I hate this man. The boss fights against him are cool, so, you know, credit where credit's due. He's definitely a strong fighter, but this is his reasoning? Really? That's all we could come up with? An even bigger sting to everything else we've talked about so far, most of this minimal lore is explained to you only if you get 100% of the scan log and item collection when you beat the game. Or, if you buy the $30 Sylex amiibo and scan that, you get access to this cutscene earlier. Oh my god, that's dumb! Metroid Prime 3 released in 2007, so we've been waiting nearly 20 years to get a payoff as to why Sylex's ship was at the very end of Prime 3, and that's all we got. And then the rest of the ending sucks too. Like, the entire last few hours of the game is just poorly paced and very tedious, and the actual final battles, once again, those are neat, but the ending itself, in my opinion, is a mischaracterization of Samus, and people will be debating this for years to come, and I respect that if your opinion is different to mine, but I also know I'm not the only one that when a specific countdown timer showed up, I didn't press the button because I thought something else was gonna happen, and then it didn't, and then I had to redo the fight again, and then I went, okay, I'll press the button this time, and then the credits roll. I'm not the only one who got upset by it, okay? Even if you liked the ending, you can't argue. There are certain story beats that they tried to make impactful that just fell flat on their face. The stories of development issues are going to be plaguing this game throughout the rest of history, and yes, when it comes to a game that had as rough of a development history as Metroid Prime 4 got, with completely changing the developer a couple years into the process, and then having to scrap things and then still use things that were part of the original vision, there are certainly some things that Retro Studios got locked into a corner and had to make do with whatever they were given. But I only feel like that excuse can be used so much because you could have just, like, replaced 2 cutscenes and the story would have been better. The game was initially announced in June of 2017, with the update on the development team being shared in January of 2019. There are certainly going to be elements of this game that are going to unavoidably be weird as a result of that shift, and the long development cycle, and honestly, the game could have used like an additional year of a delay, and maybe it would have fixed some things. Metroid fans are already used to waiting forever for this game. What's an additional year? You know? If we got a better game out of it, that probably would have been the right call. At least Metroid Prime 4 is better than Federation Force. There you go, I had to get some comparison in there. A lot of people will claim that Prime 4 is the worst Prime game of the bunch, and I just want to make sure we're clear here. Federation Force is still really damn bad. I don't want people to forget that. But yeah, as far as the core Prime games are concerned, I do believe Prime 4 is easily the worst one. And that really sucks to say. Once again, I don't want any specific part taken out of context here. I believe that this is objectively not a bad video game, and I would say that most of the game, from getting Viola in Voltforge to the end of the game at Chrono Tower, is actually pretty good, but a sour ending can really ruin the entire experience. There is still a potential positive future with this game, but then the problem comes down to game development in the modern day. If it was like how games were developed 2 decades ago, and we only had to wait like 2 years until Metroid Prime 5, it would be so much easier to mark Prime 4 Beyond as this weird one in the series, and then you'd move on, and then okay, play it if you want to, but whatever, just play Prime 5, that's where it gets good. But if we have to wait until like the year 2030 at the earliest for a follow-up to this game to right the wrongs, I almost feel like we'd be better off moving away from Prime and giving Samus a new 3D gameplay style instead. Retro Studios is still very clearly filled with a ton of talented people, but it's also worth remembering that this is clearly not the same studio responsible for the original trilogy and even the modern DKC duology. Look at this release list. What have they been doing all this time? I am skeptical. I'd like to be more hopeful. I tend to be more optimistic than I am pessimistic, but that skepticism, I can't help it, man. Prime 4 Beyond instilled that into me. At least we're probably getting another 2D Metroid soon. Dude, oh, Dread was so damn good. Mercury Steam absolutely killed it last time. Oh, and the story in a Metroid game, oh my god, it was actually incredible. I can't wait to see what they do next. Now, this is going to be a very loose comparison, so forgive me here, but as a Metroid fan, I'm reminded of an era not too dissimilar from the Sonic franchise. I'm a Sonic fan as well, and I'm reminded of the era from Sonic Mania to Sonic Forces. That specific time frame, it'll make sense in a second, just hear me out. After years of weird releases and not knowing where the franchise future lies, hey, look at that, a brand new 2D game that's gonna be a celebration of old and new ideas. And at the end of the day, once the game releases and the gamers get to play it, it was almost universally agreed these games were genuinely incredible and should be the basis for side-scrollers in this series going forward. And then, soon-ish after that, we get a 3D game being built off of a successful pedigree that mechanically feels like it should work, but then it was very clearly poorly managed and was the result of development hell. Pockets of these games can be enjoyed, surely, and I'm sure there will be conversations and arguments about the game's quality for years to come. Like I said, there is still a lot about this game that is pretty damn good, so I can see some of the bright sides to this adventure. I just don't really see myself returning to it anytime soon for a personal playthrough because I feel like the negatives outweigh the positives. And it just fills me with memories of the previous times these franchises felt like they took a massive misstep, and that's no good. Plus, Sylex is just infinite. I'm gonna say it. All the game tells you is like, hey, this is the bad guy now and he's mad, and then expect you to care when you finally take them out. They're the same guy. Both antagonists were framed in the marketing as being a major threat to the protagonist and their friends, but I don't know, they certainly don't feel like a massive threat by actually experiencing the story. You can see the vision and understand the potential the character has in a grander overarching plot, but as the player, you're not really given the time to digest the threat they actually provide, and then you take them out. Hell, at least they gave Infinite a further backstory in the comics, so he's more redeemable now. So, you know, listen, I was talking smack about Sonic, but all I'm saying is I think Infinite is cooler than Sylex. I don't know how Sylex can be resolved at this point. I would almost prefer them trying to figure out how to bring Dark Samus back for Prime 5 now, if that game ever happens. And I think Miles McKenzie is pretty similar to Charmy the Bee. So as a lifelong Nintendo fan, it gives me no joy to look at such a major release for a brand new console that's on the Switch 1 as well, but you know what I mean, and look at it and just come out of it unhappy. That gives me no pleasure whatsoever. That realistically, in like terms of the tier list of Switch 2 releases for this first year, I mean, it's probably gonna go there right next to like Dragon Drive and Welcome Tour. Like I was that disappointed by it. You know, at this point, it's the end of the video. I don't think anybody's watching anyway, so if you wanna argue about the tier list placement, go on ahead. No one's gonna believe you.